Before we begin building up the values, let's take a moment to step back from our drawings and look for mistakes. But we're going to do things a little differently this time. I want to teach you a trick to locating mistakes in your drawing. Turn your drawing and photo reference upside down. When you turn an image upside down, your brain stops looking for the subject's likeness. It stops recognizing features as a nose, eyes, or a mouth. Instead, your eyes start seeing shapes and symmetry. Mistakes will present themselves immediately. You should instantly be able to see if your drawing isn't symmetrical, if one eye is too low, or if her hairline is wrong. This practice is so effective that artists commonly work on portraits upside down the entire time. Let's take a look at my drawing. I can see that her hair comes out too far on this side. It's making her head look a bit lopsided, so I'll just erase some off here and fix the shape. Other than that, it looks good to me. If you've noticed any mistakes in your drawing, pause the video and make the necessary corrections to it. But instead of working on it normally, try working on the changes while it's upside down. Okay, let's begin building up the shading. I'm using a 2B lead and giving her hair another pass. This time I'm using medium pressure. I am still going to go over her hair with a 3B lead later, so I don't need to get it up to 9th or 10th value just yet. Again, although you see me shading in the direction of her hair, just so you know, that's arbitrary. I could just as easily be cross-hatching. The objective at this stage is to darken the value, not create texture. I don't want you trying to draw individual hairs. The formula for hair is easy. All you have to do is break it up into shapes: dark tones, midtones, and highlights. And you only have to put detail information into the highlight to make it register as hair. Remember what I told you, you can tell the texture of an object by the highlight. Of course, you can put as much detail as you like into the midtones, and even darks if you can find it, but again, that falls into the category of hyperrealism, which is more of a style choice. If you apply the techniques you learn in this course, you should be able to reach that level of realism, but my objective is to teach you a more classical style. Define the edge of this highlight a little more. You still don't need to put in any detail, just do your best to zero in on its shape. Do the same on the other side of the part as well. Again, be sure to leave the highlight empty. We'll come back later and put in detail with an H or B lead. The most common mistake I see students make is to attempt to add detail into their drawings far too early in the process. Okay, I'm going to switch to a B lead now and start building up the shadow on her face. Don't try to make too much of a transition to the lighter planes of her forehead. Do that with your H lead later. If you look closely at this area, it's actually about a value lighter than the rest of the shadow. That's the reflected light from the fill I showed you in the photography lesson. I'm switching to a 2B lead to darken the shading in her eye, starting with her pupil. Watch how much that brings out the highlights. Don't attempt to put detail into the iris with the 2B lead. Remember to save that for the H or maybe the B lead in this case. Okay, I'm going to switch to an H lead and work on the white part of her eye next. The right side's actually much lighter, and this side's actually pretty dark, so I'll briefly switch to a B lead. I'm switching to a 2B lead because this is such a large dark area. The only way I'm going to be able to see if it looks right is to work it in, which will involve breaking my rule and drawing in some eyelashes. Now I'm switching to an H lead to shade in this highlight. Well, technically it's not a highlight because it's on the shadow side of her face. It's actually reflected light from the fill panel in the photo shoot as well. That's why if you look closely, you'll see it's not first or second value. It's closer to third, maybe even fourth value. I'm going to make this shadow under her eye a fraction of a value lighter than it is in the photo, for the sake of vanity, as I explained earlier in the course. I'm going to switch to a sharpened eraser to reshape the shadow under her eyebrow a little. That looks much better. And this value needs to be built up a little more in this area. I know there's a lot going on in this spot, so it can seem tricky, but just look for the simple shapes the shadows make. For example, look at the shape of this shadow right in here that surrounds the reflected light. I'm going to jump ahead to her eye. I'm switching back to an H lead and shading over the iris because I want to reduce the pencil grain and put in detail. Okay, looks good. Let's move on to the light and midtones.